Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, September 14th Public Works Committee meeting. Now is the time for a roll call and determination quorum.
Evans. Stroman. Here. Roberts.
Here.
Jones. Here. Armstrong.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Now is time for the adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Have a motion to adopt by Councilman Stroman and a second by Councilman Evans. I was looking at the plaques in front of you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Now on to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And we have one speaker request by Jason Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt, if you'd come up to the dais. And if you would give us your name and your address.
This one? Jason Schmidt, 2333 South Valley.
Thank you. The dais is yours.
Well, I thought Pat was going to start this, but we've been working with Public Works and the Police Department for probably 16 months now, trying to get some type of satisfaction for South Valley itself. The increase of traffic and it's brought up a lot of safety related issues. We have a lot of kids that are riding bikes on the side of the road. There's no sidewalks, there's deep ditches. And so we had tried to come up with multiple ways of slowing traffic down, of trying to be able to make it a safer environment for everyone out there. We were just stopped at every turn on everything. We came up with speed bumps, we came up with four-way signs, we came up with lowering the posted speed limit. All that stuff was rejected. When Kyle decided to put in them apartment buildings at the end, right by Johnson Ranch, we kind of discussed with him about putting in street lights, and to my knowledge, he had agreed for them as a development to pay for the street lights going down South Valley Drive on existing poles that were there. That what that's going to do for us is going to increase the lighting, because you drive down that road, it's completely black at night. And you got people walking their dogs and walking, and with the cars driving as fast as they are, it's only a matter of time before somebody gets hurt. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here today, is to ask you guys to push forward on something that Pat's going to present that will allow us to get them streetlights put in and to add a little bit of safety to our road.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Jones, you have the dais.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Schmidt, thank you for coming today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I attempted to get this actual plan on the agenda for today, but was told that I was too late in getting it on the agenda. So my official plan and request will be on the agenda for 2 weeks from today. But I will echo what Mr. Schmidt said. We've been working very hard trying to come up with something to try to make a difference on South Valley Road. And I have been told no this many times since I tried to get a prom date in high school. So we have a plan now that we believe is simple, is cheap, will be effective, and we will bring the exact plan, or I will bring the exact plan forward 2 weeks from today. I'll get it to all of us, of course, sooner than that for review. But we do have a plan that's cheap and effective, and I believe would make a difference out in that area and show the folks out there that we are listening to them. This is the first thing that got put on my plate as a city councilman when I was elected in July of last year, and we've been working on it since then. So, Mr. Schmidt, I very much appreciate you coming today. He has put in a lot of time on this, as have some other residents out there, and so we want to keep working, trying to find an amicable solution to try to make a difference out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that staff heard what Mr. Jones said, and if you have that plan, if you can get it to them, we will just plan on putting it on our next Public Works meeting. We're going to do this a little bit different now. Before we remove items, consent items 1 through 12, I'm going to ask staff if there's anything 1 through 12 that they would like to bring forward and discuss at this moment.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
You may.
I could certainly speak to every item on the agenda if you would like me to, give a very brief overview as we did during the working session items, or if the committee has any specific ones that they would like me to talk about, I'd be more than happy to do that. So what is the committee's wish?
I think I will open it up to the committee and ask the committee if there's any items on there, or if you would like a brief summary of all items. I'm good with that. It's up to the committee. So before we do that, why don't we remove any items that the or that anyone on this body wants to remove? So we'll remove item 5 and we'll remove item 11. And then, if somebody will make a motion, we'll make a motion on all of these. N6, 5, 6, and 11. So we have a motion, if we can get a second. We will. And we have a second. So all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, now.
We have to do roll call.
Oh, we do, absolutely, yes. So we'll have to do a roll call vote. Go ahead.
Evans? Stroman? Jones? Roberts?
Yes.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Sorry that I forgot about you, Laura. So now we will move on, and Mr. Tech, if you'd like to give us a brief summary of those items, and then when we get to item 5, we'll keep you there and we'll probably have some more questions for you.
Very good. All right, items 1 and 2 are related to the Western Pennington Flood Management Commission, and actually there's no real short explanation on this, but I'll do my best. This goes back 20 plus years ago, where there was an organized drainage commission, they called it, Western Pennington Flood Management Commission. That commission was in operation for a number of years, and they primarily worked on flood control, primarily out in Rapid Valley, adjacent to the city, out in Rapid Valley, and then also Box Elder. So the city of Rapid City, the city of Box Elder, and Pennington County were the official organization through a memorandum of understanding or some other organization. That committee was, I won't say disbanded, but the county took away the ability for them to collect any money. I believe there was an assessment that the county was doing to raise funds to make drainage improvements. That went away, therefore the function of the Western Pennington Flood Management Commission kind of went away, but not officially. It was never officially disbanded. As part of their historical function, the Western Pennington Flood Management Commission also obtained property, drainage easements, properties that had a tendency to flood, properties where actual improvements had been made for either water impoundment or drainage channels. So anyway, there are some parcels of property out there that need to be transferred to different entities, whoever's jurisdiction it is. So item number 2 here is a request to abate property owned by the Drainage Commission, but long-term, the goal is to get that property under the city's name because it's one of our flood control issues, or I shouldn't say issues, features that we need to permanently maintain. So anyway, Item 1 is to actually appoint members back to the Flood Management Commission in conjunction with the county, and I don't know if Box Elder, I'm assuming, is following suit. But that action will be then to officially disband that commission. And then moving forward, these properties that come up, there won't be any question about who owns it or who has the ability to take those over. So that's kind of an overview of items 1 and 2. Carla Cushman's over there nodding in approval of everything that I've said. She's been the one doing all the hard work on this. I will give her a moment or two if she has any additional comments.
No, I think you covered it. Thanks.
All right, moving on to item 3. That is a drainage lot that was part of a subdivision. It's standard procedure for the city to accept drainage lots if they're part of a regional drainage facility, so that's standard business. Item 4 is for our annual snow removal contract on streets, so it's not parking lots. It's typically if we have a snow event downtown, we have to hire a contractor to come in to haul the snow out. So that's what item 4 is. Item 5 is part of our standard pavement preservation work that we do. So this is a project to do panel repair, spall repair on 5th Street. Item 6 is an amendment to an agreement that was previously passed by the City Council to obtain some water rights for Hawthorne Ditch. There was a couple of different parties involved in that, and we've worked out an agreement with the Hawthorne Ditch folks, and I believe it's Arrowhead Golf Course, to make sure that the transfer fits everyone that has ownership in those property rights. So we've reached a different agreement, so we need to do an amendment to the first agreement. Item 7 is a fire hydrant and water main project. This is on the agenda because they've done work with the city. It's under the bid amount, yet their aggregate has been exceeded, so you need to approve the contract, if you will, for that. Item 8 is a water service agreement with Red Rock Golf Club. Years ago, the city entered into an agreement with Red Rock's golf course regarding a well. It's raw water, it's not treated water. This is just an update to that agreement that's been in place for quite some time. Item 9, variance for sidewalk. Staff recommends approval as there's no connectivity, I believe. Items 10 and 11, well, I'll talk about them separately, but item 10 is a state water plan application for improvements out at solid waste. We previously had submitted an application beyond the state water plan. The state water plan actually is a funding source for not just water projects, but water, sewer, solid waste, drainage. They have that. So we need to update the application this year, so it'll be approved. I won't say the projects will be approved, but the funding mechanism will be there. So if we're eligible for grant dollars or low or no interest loans, we've got our name there, so we'd be eligible for those either grants or low interest loans. And then item 11 is the same thing. Last meeting, I believe we had an application for this water reclamation facility. This is the same type of request, is to submit for the state water plan funding for a new water treatment plant, what we're calling the Eastside Water Treatment Plant. Once again, this does not obligate the city to spend any money at all. This is just getting our name on the list for the possibility of funding. As most of you probably know, there was about $900 million worth of funds that the state is receiving as part of the original COVID money, if you will, that will be overseen by the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources through their state water plan. So we're looking to get our name on the list so we're eligible for that funding. And then finally, item 12 is a an agreement with Pennington County. We do exchange of snow routes, so certainly some of our border roads that we have with the county, it makes sense for us to plow some county roads, and it makes sense for the county to plow some city roads. So this agreement's been in place for decades. We just update it every year to make sure that everyone's in agreement, and I believe out of the 10, 12, 14 miles of roads, whatever it is, we're within about a quarter mile of sharing either way. So it's a very equitable agreement, and both parties like to take advantage of this on an annual basis. I'll stand for questions on items 5, 6, and 11.
Thank you very much. We'll go to item 5, and when your questions come up, are they pertaining to something other than 5, 6, or 11?
5.
Okay, so we'll go to item 5. Item 5, authorize staff to advertise for Fifth Street Panel Repair, Minnesota to Stumer, project number 21-2657/CIP 50445 for $440,000. And Mr. Jones, you have the dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm always appreciative of money being spent on streets in Ward 1. I have some questions about this one, as I'm trying to see in my mind where there's significant amount of damage or poor street that needs to be repaired there in comparison to a lot of the residential areas there. Grandview, the area around Grandview Elementary comes to mind. And a lot of the residential streets throughout there are really, really in rough shape. I can't picture this chunk of road needing repair more than some of the residential streets in Ward 1. So I guess I just would like a little deeper explanation as to why we're spending money on this project, which would be a nice to do, but repairing some residential streets seems like it's really a need to do. I'll reserve the rest of my time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
You may.
That's a great question, and first of all, street classification is very important as far as how we manage our pavement management system. Certainly, Fifth Street's an arterial road. It's a multi-lane concrete roadway. It sees in excess of 10,000 vehicles a day on it. It's very important for us to keep that infrastructure maintained. It's like keeping your house painted and keeping your deck maintained at your home. The more money you spend in maintenance, and it's been over 15 years since anything's been done on this road, since it was new. We have to spend money to keep our good roads good. That is the biggest bang for our buck in the city, especially on our arterial roadways. We do this every year on some sort of concrete arterial roadway. So anyway, I think if you go down to the intersection of Fifth Street and Stumer, you'll see the type of damage. There's a number of broken panels down there. We need to get those fixed, keep those fixed so the roadway lasts a lot longer, because obviously when we're having to do rebuilds of major arterial roadways, that is a major inconvenience to the public. So it's money well spent doing maintenance on our major arterial roads to keep them good for as long as we can.
Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much. And I don't disagree with the word you said, Mr. Tech, but I know the residential streets through that part of town. You know, people are begging and crying out for street repair and upgrades and that kind of thing, and it's hard to tell them why we're not doing it. And so, you know, keep good roads good, absolutely. What do we do with roads that are really bad, such as those in that area? And, you know, are they part of a plan right now for upgrades? Or what more can you tell us about that area?
As with any community in the United States, we are fiscally constrained as far as how much money we have to spend on roadways. It was computed by somebody in my office here a year or two ago that at our current rate of funding, it would be 193 years before we got to every road in Rapid City. So we have choices to make. I've talked to public works folks all over the country, and residential street condition is probably the biggest issue that people deal with. So our level of funding isn't there to go out and fix every street. We just can't do it. We have to make choices. We choose to spend money to keep our good roads good because, as I said before, that is our biggest bang for our buck. Every year, though, we are pecking away at streets that are bad that we're having to reconstruct, but we don't have a comprehensive plan to identify what year or even what decade we'll be able to be in fixing some residential streets, unfortunately.
I know there have been, may I continue, Mr. Chair? Thank you. I know there have been some plans, like there's been recent work on Elm Avenue, which has been very good, especially that intersection. And there's work going on right now in some streets that were part of some kind of a plan to get those done. How is it determined for areas like in and around Grandview Elementary, those neighborhoods, when they would be on a plan? I know one time you told me that the stuff underground determines full street replacement, and I remember that. But just, I know there are other things that you do than full street replacement.
Correct. Our utility needs drive about half of, or probably a little more than half of the road needs. So certainly if we've got failing water infrastructure or sewer infrastructure and need to get in and reconstruct those, you completely obliterate the road. So you've got to replace it. It's a full reconstruction. So obviously we rely on our operations folks, our street department folks that are out there every day filling potholes, our drainage folks that are out maintaining drainage catch basins and drainage ways. They're letting us know where problem areas are. And like I said, you can go to any part of town and find bad streets. That's an easy thing to do, trust me. But obviously the ones that are hazardous or are causing drainage issues or things like that tend to take priority. But we are in no position to create a priority list of which streets are going to be first. It is purely based on operational needs on a year-to-year basis.
I would encourage the rest of us up here, and thank you, Mr. Tech, to drive by these areas and perhaps take a look at them at the area that is on here for item 5, the Minnesota to Stumer repair, and then take a drive through parts of Ward 1 over near Grandview Elementary and the southern part over there near the hospital and the older residential areas there. You know, they are charming neighborhoods that have been around a long time in Rapid City, and those folks deserve attention just like anyone else does. And I'm not saying the project isn't important or one's more important than the other, but those that make the decisions, if it's the street department and this committee, I encourage you to just take a drive through that area and just visualize a little bit of what I'm bringing to the table, and just so we can keep it fresh in the people's minds of who make the decisions, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. Thank you, Mr. Tech. I appreciate your explanation. I'll yield. Thank you.
Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
I'm going to take credit for setting Mr. Jones off on this one earlier when I got this list, because I had the misfortune of having to drive through that neighborhood several times in the last 2 weeks because of having to visit schools for various programs. And I'm telling you, those streets are the worst in this city, period. And if I were making the decision, I would delay some of these reconstructions and restorations of Fifth Street, simply because I consider those streets to be hazardous. I think they're that bad. So I think we should have a process where we do prioritize things based upon how really tremendously horrible they are. And if you haven't driven down them recently, it's a good thing. I think you should drive down them every night for the next week and see how those people must feel about city government when they go home every day, because it's almost, I consider it disgraceful. So I think we need to reprioritize. I understand the need for maintenance. I understand the need for prevention of further damage, say in that major arterial, but I also understand how you're neglecting a certain neighborhood, and this is not even my ward. But I'm telling you, you need to see firsthand how bad some of these streets are. East Texas, Montana, I'm trying to think of the names of the streets over there. I think it would become a high priority if you drove down them morning and night. I can't think of worse streets anywhere in this part of, frankly, anywhere in the city than those. It's pretty bad. So I think we maybe need to revisit it, perhaps reallocate some of this money and do some of these things as an emergency repair, rather than stick to our plan, which, although valid, maybe is not critical, whereas I consider some of these streets at critical stage. So that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand what the Public Works Director, Mr. Tech, is telling us, because those very expensive arterial roadways, they still need repair. It seems like Sheridan Lake Road gets done a lot. I can imagine that the panels on Stumer are also like that. It's just a condition of living in our climate, I think. But I also agree with Mr. Tech that there are streets in any ward in this town. I know in Ward 3, Carriage Hills, and I do believe that one's dangerous because there's no curb there, and it's really rough. And if we're going to look at prioritizing things, I'm going to be in there pitching for Carriage Hills and whatever else is in my ward. But that one in particular, because it's hilly and narrow and has no curb, I think that's should be a real priority at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, if the committee doesn't mind if I chime in for a minute, even though I usually don't do this. I understand what my two colleagues are saying about prioritizing certain streets around town. We do have a CIP. We do have a CIP plan. Without looking at it, I can't tell you where any of those roads may or may not fall within the 5-year plan. One thing that I have seen over decades in Rapid City is council people coming in and changing the CIP and it causing major problems down the road. I've seen where streets, I'll give you a good example, Custer Street, which was recently redone within the last couple of years. So I knew a gentleman that lived on that road since he built the house in the late 40s. When they rebuilt that road, it was the first time there'd been any major work done on that road. So these can be very long-term things. But one of the problems that we find is if we neglect our major arterial streets, when we end up having a failure or a problem, it costs you millions, if not tens of millions of dollars to fix these things, where, if we can find the money without screwing up the 5-year CIP plan to maybe do a chip seal on a road, because that does happen when some of these get very bad. And sometimes if you talk to engineering, a lot of times the reason we're not doing a chip seal on these roads is we may have it on the CIP for 3 or 4 or 5 years out, and we're looking at doing a complete rebuild on these roads where we're doing water, sewer, drainage on them, and we don't want to throw away $200,000 or $300,000 of the taxpayers' money to do this for a quick fix. And I've also seen that quick fix. In 2011, the council pushed, or 2010, the council pushed through a chip seal on East North Street. $500,000 for the chip seal on East North Street. Within 4 or 5 years, we rebuilt that street, or we started to rebuild that street. That was taxpayers' money, and it was bad. It was really bad. I drove it every day. I used to say, well, if this gets any worse, I'm going to have to buy a bigger 4-wheel drive, because it was awful. But again, that kind of money for that short of a time, and like Mr. Tech says, we've got extremely limited budgets. We've got to make sure what we have, we use to the best that we can and the best ability that we can. Take a good look at these roads. I recommend you guys take a good look at these roads. You talk to Mr. Tech, find out where they are in the CIP plan, and maybe something can be done there. But this council pushing through your priorities, like Greg said, he's got priorities in his, I've got priorities in mine. Where does it quit? Where does it end? I mean, we have to, I've said this for many years. Yes, we should prioritize all of our projects through the street department, you know, we should prioritize that. But also, we need to rely on our staff. That's what our staff does. That's what our staff puts together for us. You know, once we get into the position of us that aren't qualified to do that and start pushing through this stuff, we're going to have chaos. So anyway, item 5, if we're ready to vote on it, do we have a motion on it? No, we're not going to sit here and argue.
I'm not going to argue about it. I'm just going to say, you need to drive down those streets.
I do drive down those streets, Bill.
You repeat.
First time I've ever done that in 10 years.
Well,
I'll get
fine.
off. Thank you. Now we need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Got a motion to approve by Councilwoman Armstrong, a second by Councilman Stroman. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call, sorry.
Evans? Stroman? Roberts?
Aye.
Jones? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item number 6, authorize mayor and finance director to sign the First Amendment to agreement between the City of Rapid City and the Hawthorne Ditch Company for purchase of water rights. Mr. Evans? Well, you were still in. I just didn't take you out. I'm sorry. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question for Mr. Tech, if I may. This water rights issue in number 6, and there's also one in number 8. Are they both for untreated water, or is it treated water under number 6 because it doesn't say it's untreated, or?
Yeah, item number 6 is for creek water. It's natural water, it's untreated. I believe Arrowhead does currently receive water through an untreated gallery that's pumped to the golf course. So yes, these water rights that we're obtaining are untreated natural water, if you will. Certainly for municipal purposes, we will treat the water in our treatment plants and then put it in our distribution system. I believe the component for Arrowhead will remain as untreated water for their golf course.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to approve if there's no other discussion.
We have a motion by Councilman Stroman, a second by Councilman Jones, and we will go to roll call vote.
Evans? Stroman? Roberts?
Aye.
Jones? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 11, acknowledge submittal of a state water plan application for the proposed East Rapid City Water Treatment Plant. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
I think it's great that they're getting ahead of the curve and are getting this application in, because I know there's a pipeline for such projects. I would like to mention, though, that many of us have been concerned about this many-faceted problem we have, a short-term one and a much longer-term one that might even involve pipelines to the Missouri and everything else. And I think we need to be much more holistic in the planning for this. I just mentioned this item to the mayor upstairs. He was unaware that any such thing was being submitted today. And this just goes to show that sometimes we get in our little domain and we do our thing, but there's more input to be taken out there. I know that Cheryl Chapman and the pipeline people, Helene Duhamel, they're working very hard to bring water to this part of the country. I think any planning we do concerning this, we have to be integrating our plans for the future. And we have a short-term problem in supplying water to these new housing developments. This is not going to accommodate these in the next 3 to 5 years, because this is going to be a long-term project. It's going to take years to get this up and running. I think we should investigate entering into some kind of relationship with the Rapid Valley system to supply us some temporary water or whatnot. I think we need to explore these options. That's all I wanted to say about this particular item, but I do appreciate that it's getting on the pipeline for funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to speak on this item? And if I could have just 1 second on this item, if the committee doesn't mind. Dale, can I ask you a question? As far as these applications, if we do get put on the list for some funding, could that funding possibly be transferable to, like Mr. Evans said, to the pipeline that they're talking about, to, or will this be a specific application for a specific?
All applications have to be specific. There's no transferable. In fact, you have to have a very comprehensive plan when they come around for the funding allocation part of it, so they're non-transferable.
And is this grant funds? Is it a combination of grant and loans and?
It's unknown at this time, but we anticipate it'll be a combination of grants and loans and maybe even some principal forgiveness. We don't know. That's up to the state to decide how they're going to allocate their money and in which manner.
But again, if we do get any of this funding, we get a look at it before anything's accepted and.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I had, so if we have a motion. We have a motion by Mr. Evans and a second by Mr. Jones. So we'll go to.
Evans? Stroman? Roberts?
Aye.
Jones? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. If we could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
You are the last party in the conference.